The House of Mystery presents Inside Writing, the radio show where authors discuss their writing process in all genres.
Welcome back to the House of Mystery, and of course, I'm Al Warren. Now, joining me on the host table is the one and only Mr. Michael Zodiac Butterfield.
Hi, Al.
Hey, you've been gone a long time. Famous man, going and doing all these TV shows and series, and
Well, what can I say? I got to do what I got to do, but it's great to be back. I'm sorry I've been away for so long. Just my schedule doesn't usually permit it, but I'm glad to be here today.
Well, as long as I don't have to deal with some agent to get you on. That's...
Yeah, you don't have that problem now. Can't afford an agent right now.
Yeah, well, you start demanding more money. Okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah, just say
tell them you said so.
Yeah, tell them double or nothing. So you'll get $50.
yeah, it's a big true crime business.
Yeah, they'll take you to like a McDonald's and get you supersized and give you $50.
Yeah, I'll stipulate that in my contract.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make sure you're a big star before I'm done.
Well, I appreciate that, Al.
That's what I do. I'm the star maker. Anyway, well, let's just get into it today because we've got a very interesting guest. I'm sort of interested anyway because he's written a couple of books and he was a former CIA, right? So that's the key thing because CIA makes the news so much lately and stuff like this. So I really want to know, if he's lost any emails.
It's the wrong agency.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. It's all the same, right? So now I guess the newest of the two books was The Spy Devils, and of course, Joe Goldberg. Thank you for being on the show.
I'm happy to be here. I have lost no emails except for when I...
Did you have a big delete or anything? You didn't lose anything?
No, I decided to burn my house down, burn my computer at the same time, so that got rid of all those emails. That was easy.
That's a better excuse, actually.
Yeah, he's like that one. Burn my dog ate my computer.
Yeah. It must be... do you ever concern yourself about how a company or an agency like that you worked for before gets coverage in, let's say, news or events or current affairs? Does it ever sort of shy you away from admitting you worked for them, or what? How do you feel?
It never really shies me away. Let's see, Spy Devils came out about the time of the Senate report on enhanced interrogation techniques, and I was on a couple TV show interviews in my local town, and they asked me about it, and you just say there's people doing their jobs, and they get what they deserve, and they don't get what they deserve. So whatever happens in the news, that's different than reality. I teach social media news and misinformation and like in some community college. So reality and the news can be sort of different things, but it didn't really ever shy me away. I don't necessarily just go out and volunteer it sometimes, but it's a whole new world from what it was back when I was there. So,
how long ago were you there?
I was there in the old days.
Did they have cars?
They had cars, but CNN was just on the air, 85 to 93.
Oh wow!
The videotape. There was news stories about these weird things called compact discs and the digital revolution that may impact the entertainment and music and world. And so it was stone knives and bearskins compared to what we have today. And that's actually what made it unique back then, because it was the analog digital transition for a lot of information use. And we were building it. We were building it back then.
It's funny because even CDs and DVDs are past.
Yep. Yeah. Now they're collectibles.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. Well, when you're in an agency like that and you decide to leave and then you start writing books like you've done, and I know we've had a few other agents on, and of course, Alma Katsu is one of the more popular ones. Do you have to be guarded on what you do put in your books?
Well, guarded, you signed the secrecy agreement, and I believe in the things I signed. So the manuscript has to get reviewed. In fact, I'll be doing that for my next one, next couple of weeks. I'm kind of hoping things get redacted because then you can say, "Oh, the things that the CIA didn't want printed in my book. Buy my book."
Great marketing.
They didn't want you to hear. Absolutely. I had a motto when I write, which is I try to be as real as I can if I'm going to prison. And so the first book was, I thought, it was very inside the doors. It was basically autobiographical in most cases. The second one was a little bit less. The third one now, I'm running out of stories. But I put it in there, but I write, and I keep that in mind. I'll be honest with you. But now that I've read and listened to, I've gone to audiobooks, I've gone to the dark side, I've gone to audiobooks. Now that I have listened / read a lot of current books, I see what's in there from former agency people, like the great book, Damascus Station by Dan McCluskey, Dave McCluskey, sorry. There's a lot in there that I thought, wow, they put a lot. There's stuff in here that I'm surprised. So I guess they're either not paying attention, they're overwhelmed, or maybe the characteristics of what they're looking for have changed. But I do personally keep it in mind to answer your question.
They probably lost the emails.
Yeah, well, you got to keep beating on it. Have you reviewed my book yet? Have you reviewed my book yet? Since I've been gone for a long time, things that I did or know or worked on are ancient history. When I wrote the first one, it wasn't quite so ancient history, so I was a little bit more concerned. But there are still things that my wife doesn't know and people don't know because there's no reason to know. I promised I wouldn't talk about it, so I don't. That's no great honor. It's what I promised I would do.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Here comes the mother-in-law.
Yeah. Well, it was so long ago. I mean, JFK is already dead now, so just so you know.
Yeah.
I think you can talk about it.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with that. I did read a few books saying that we were involved, but not me. I wasn't around.
Well, how do you feel about that? I'd like to ask you, how do you feel about that the CIA is the bad guy in so much fiction and film and television? It's just like an automatic, who's the bad guy? It's the CIA.
Yeah, that drives me a little bit nuts. What drives me a little bit more nuts than the agency's the bad guys, because when you don't know about something and it's dark and it's shadowy, it's easy to make them the unknown bad guys. And I actually use that to my advantage in my book. I write things I know are just thriller fluff, but it's the kind of things that people like to read and makes them turn the page, which is the whole point. But what really gets me is when the media world screws up. And example, Jason Bourne #3. It's that Bourne Supremacy. when the whole movie turns on the fact that the guy, you probably saw it or didn't see it, the guy gets blown up and his briefcase survives, and he has in his briefcase a document that got burned, but there is the address of the super secret New York substation with the agency seal on the cover. I'm like, I actually sat forward in my chair in the theater and just went, no. That ruins it. I know there's jump the shark moments, but come on. And let's have the flags of the agency in the window that you can look through from across the street.
Yeah.
That was hilarious. It's just, come on. Can you just, I know there's these, and then writers do it all the time. Oh, there's going to be the logo is going to be on this certain device that if it wasn't there, you couldn't write the rest of the book. It wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Okay. It wouldn't be there. I get it. So that's just, I try to stay real. Don't jump the shark too many times. I know it has to be done. The coincidence has to be happened. The moment you kind of go, really has to happen, but not let's have printed on the outside of the book in Morocco, the address of the secret substation in downtown New York City, the actual address. Oh God. Sorry, I'm okay. I'm humming. I'm humming.
Well, I guess that whole thing is well, maybe not. What do you think the general public gets wrong about the CIA, like in general? Like, so what the average Joe citizen out there thinks about the CIAs and what it is, but it's totally not.
Well, there's three things. There's several things. First of all, it's not law enforcement agency.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no badges. There's no carry in the United States. It's not Homeland. You're not seeing a bunch of CIA guys in vans running around spying on Americans with guns.
Yeah,
that's another. I like that show, but that just drove me nuts. It's not spying on you. That's the IRS's job and the FBI's job, but mostly the IRS's job. And most people are just hardworking civil servants who come into work every day and do their job, read their piece of paper, do their thing, are excellent, the best they are in the world of what they do, and then go home and play with the kids. There's a very small percentage of people who are doing what they make TV shows out of or write books about, the case officer, covert action. And most case officers are in the station and they do their day job and they trudge off to their night job and, and they get a couple pieces of paper from somebody or take some notes and come back to the station and type their thing up and are exhausted and go. There's not a lot of bang, bang, shoot 'em up. It's raising your hand and pledging allegiance to the Constitution to give the best information you possibly can to decision makers at whatever level. So that's kind of what the first book was about. My first book, Secret Wars. In fact, I dedicated it to the Patriots. You know who you are, because they do the job. So don't think that everybody there is a Jason Bourne. Most people are just people doing their job, and give them some credit. And you're never going to know their name, but their job is to protect and defend the country.
Right.
They're not perfect. The agency makes a lot of mistakes. It's got political leadership. I get it. And everybody takes the beating for that. But really, it's just people.
Yeah, they're just humans, and they live a life, and they have flaws just like everybody else.
Yep, and they're not superhuman. They're just drone. I call them drone bees. We buzz in and we buzz out.
Yeah, they're not all like Queen Latifah, where they can walk in a room and, beat up 10 guys in 5 seconds.
Up, yeah. I didn't know. I knew a few of those guys, and they were teddy bears on the outside. Just don't poke them in the eye.
Yeah. That's like Michael here. You got to be careful.
Exactly.
He looks soft, but no, vicious.
That's kind of a fierce pictures he's got.
Yeah.
He's got that deadly Zodiac stare.
Well, he was the Zodiac, in case you didn't know that.
Yes.
I have a solid alibi. I was not alive.
Yeah, so you say.
Oh, prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it. Yeah.
So
where's your birth certificate?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's probably with Obama somewhere, right? Come on. Sorry, I had to. What made you get into writing a book? Like, okay, so, so you have this life working the agency, and you're doing your thing and all that stuff, and you're going to leave, so you leave, but you're not a kid anymore, and so usually when
thanks, Dad.
Well, usually when people go into something like writing, they don't do it when they're older, they do it when they're younger. So what what it is? What gave you that confidence to do it?
Well, it's kind of it's a tripping story here. I actually wrote the first book in the 1990s, soon after I left. I left in the early 90s. I started writing in the late 1990s. And actually, the week of 9/11, the day before 9/11, actually, I had my book in the manila envelopes with the cover letters before the internet, ready to send to agents. And then 9/11 happens. My book is about terrorism. It's about the beginning of terrorism in Libya and Reagan and all Gaddafi and all that sort of stuff. And so I'm like, oh, wow. So I opened up my manila envelopes. I rewrite my cover letter that says, if not now, when, about terrorism, send them. I got responses back saying, like it, but, no terrorism, which was absolutely wrong, because that's when all the bestseller authors now start taking off, Thor and all that, Flynn.
Yeah.
And so I let it sit. I was discouraged. I let it sit for about 14, 15 years. And then a couple life things happened. My mom got sick. My one of the characters in my book, a mentor, he got sick and survived, but he got sick. So I'm like, this is an omen. So I pulled it out of whatever file I had it on some floppy disk somewhere, and started rewriting it back in the 2015, 16, whatever I did, 2001, 2, 3, 14. And it had been sitting for a long time, so I was older and away from it. I think that gave me a new perspective. And it didn't make me a better writer, but it gave me a perspective on the older characters in my book, how they life experiences. I just wasn't snot kidding through everything. And so that book came together, and it is really pretty accurate. And then I said, I'll write the sequel. And, it gets a little harder. I'm still working. I got the kids. And I had somebody tell me that, no, don't write historical fiction like my first book was, write contemporary fiction. So I stopped again. I said, okay, I'll take your advice, best-selling author. And I stopped writing my sequel and started off the Spy Devils series, which took a couple of years to figure out how I was going to do it, what stories could I tell, massage. And so, like you say, now I'm a lot older. And I'm looking back at these characters saying, how was I when I was 40? As opposed to, what will I be like when I'm 40?
Yeah.
I can say, how was I? Now I'm 61-ish, and almost 62-ish. And so now I'm the age of the oldest characters in my first book. So I can do a perspective. But I also have freer time because I don't have the kids around anymore. I don't have that. I can occupy my mind. And you just say, why do you do it? You want to tell stories, right? If you want to tell them so other people enjoy them, you want to tell them because you just have a desire to tell them. That's about it. You want entertaining. I had some people ask me today, are you making any money off of these? I go, money? Are you kidding? If I was doing this are you doing this for money? There's no way.
Yeah.
You're doing it because you want to tell a story, and hopefully it's an interesting story with good characters. And so as being older doing it, I have a chance to think and look back on events, issues, and life experiences as opposed to wonder what they're like going forward.
Yeah. But being older and writing something, I would imagine there would be a subtext or something a little bit more of meaning underneath the entertainment.
Yes, in fact, that's what comes out. That's what the Spy Devils series really is. Everybody is a little bit older, and some of the main characters are in their 70s, and my main character is 39, 40. And I had some things I wanted them to say and do. And the idea of family relationships, not CIA, bang, bang, but how do you relate to people who are parents or people who you're not related to, but you treat as family because that's who you spend all your time with, which is what the agency family is when you're inside the hallways or inside the walls, that's your family because those are the only people who know what you really do. So the Spy Devils are a family. My main character works for his mother. That's family. So there's these dynamic relationships. And I did that because both my parents died within less than a year of each other as I was writing Spy Devils. So I'm like, okay, I need to have some family things in here. And that sort of drove me. Things I probably would not have been sensitive to if I was younger. Because, to be honest, the end's getting closer in the beginning for me. And to say, okay, here's why I write. I don't want my grandkids to forget me.
When you talked about how long it took you, and you said you had written it before 9/11, how much do you feel the world of espionage and things like that changed in the time between when you wrote it and when you finally came back to it years later?
I think the tradecraft tools and techniques of spotting, assessing, recruiting, collecting, those recruitment cycle things, those are foundational. But the way it's done, I was a propaganda operations officer. All right, I did visual media, television type of things, visual media propaganda. That was my best job of my life. Hit the ground running every day. I was 25 years old and a multi-million-dollar budget. It was great. And just my job was to screw the Soviets up, period. Mm-hmm. Well, a few other people too, but the Soviets were number one on the list. But that was, as we said earlier, that was the Stone Knives and Bearskins Day. We were doing things with paper and videotape. Now and so it took time. You did not know how effective you were going against the Berlin Wall when President Reagan says, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Now it's instantaneous. You have the digital revolution has changed, in my opinion, has changed espionage, how it's done and how it's communicated to the outside world tremendously. Hell, if you bought a CIA mug inside the building, it's like, ooh, I bought a mug. Now they sell the stuff online from the agency, right? They have a website. Okay, it's an open world in some senses, not the actual doing of the collecting, but the digital change has made a difference. Do I know about the quality of the character of the people who are actually doing it? The ones I know or met are good quality and character, maybe a little younger, perhaps, but their world that they have to look at is much more diverse. And we had a pretty diverse world back in the 1980s and 90s when you're dealing with narco-terrorists and hostages in Beirut and the Berlin Wall falling down. All that, it was pretty complex. It's pretty complex today too, and the complexity of working in this world with those issues is made even more challenging because of real-time information.
And did you have to do like some studying and research to kind of get yourself up to speed on how things are now?
Yes, I did. That's a good question because I wanted to get caught up. I knew enough people where I could just ask questions generically to say what sort of has changed, read articles that have been written about current operations. There's things in the government reports, even the Senate report on enhanced terror stuff. I try to get a handle on what's new and different. And the place kept reorganizing. They reorganize every time you blink. So back in the good old days, it was DO and DI and DSD, S&T, and DA, administration people. Now it's like it's fusion centers. And now it's going back to the old way. I can't keep up. So the biggest problem was jargon. Mm-hmm. What are they calling things now that they aren't calling them then, to not to date myself, for me?
Yeah.
I write fiction. So if I don't know what it is, make it up. Right? It's just make it up. And the people who really know, they're gonna go, oh, jump the shark, Joe, and they'll complain like I complain. But most people will say, oh, that makes sense because you're making up something that's reasonable, and I can't get stuck on it. I try to be as realistic as I possibly can. That's why I said that before. And everybody researches, but the quality of the character of the individual, the means by way they do it digitally, the changes that have happened in structure, those I just got to keep track of. And in fact, that's kind of a problem I'm having right now. I'm starting on the third of my book in my series. I'm like, I got to know something, but I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to figure out how to know it. That's what I was doing actually before we started talking. How am I going to figure this out? And I'm still not sure.
Yeah. And how does that play into, because I noticed here on your webpage where you talk about how you said it would be presumptuous to say that you're a writer, but obviously you are a writer. But how did that work when it came to learning how to write and how to make yourself feel confident in what you're doing?
Well, writers write, right? Writers write and writers read. Mm-hmm. And, if you should be writing all the time if you can. That goes back to the question about age. Discipline. The discipline of saying, I'm writing from 9 to 11 or whatever your time frame is and taking a break. That might get a little bit older, a little bit more difficult, I think, with somewhat age because my mind wanders a little bit more freely. But the more you do it, sort of the better you get, the more you read other people's stuff, the more you get feedback from peers, friends, enemies, well, not enemies, but people who are going to give you constructive comments. That really helps. And I need to write more. I just personally, the more you write, the better. You read about how do you start. I kind of go with the Hemingway method. I don't know what I'm going to write. I'm going to write the best, worst sentence I can think of and start writing it down and go from there. Mm-hmm. And I'll make it better later on. Get that first draft done. You're not writing a first draft. You're never writing it. At least I never write a first draft. Yeah. I get it in the computer. or put it on paper, quote unquote. Then you start to write. Then you start making it the stuff sing.
Well, they say that editing is the most important part of writing, right? So
that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting for it right now. The next book in the Spy Devils, it's on the editor. I'll have it back next week. I'm waiting to see what the comments are. But editing is everything. And it's like, you go through the first draft and you go, what was I thinking? Who wrote that? Was like how many Trulies did I have that night to write something like that? And then, and then you got to do the hard thing. I mean, you got to cut it. Yeah. And I told my editor, these pieces are sacrosanct. I'm not going to cut these. And then I cut them. It didn't fit. It just didn't work. And he was right. So you just got to give up those things that you really like, but it's not part of the story. And that's why I think you start becoming a writer, is when you can give up the things that you really like and put the things in are the story and are the characters, as opposed to just stuff that you like to write and how it sounds.
Yeah.
And I bet you maybe you can use it later. You got that cut file, and you bring it back sometime down the road where it fits better. But the actual writing structure, going to writer workshops and dealing with other writers, there are some who are more dedicated than others. I'm not that dedicated. But
writers are awful people.
Not horrible.
So
they are. We stink. It depends upon your genre. I think there's a genre issue there.
Yeah, and I noticed here it says, I have this in common with you, it says that you read more nonfiction than fiction.
Yes.
And you mentioned Frederick Forsyth and Tom Clancy and others as people that you read, but what kind of nonfiction do you like to read, especially what influences you? Well,
I'm an eclectic reader. So like right now I'm doing Path Between the Seas by David McCullough. I'm an American history minor, so I do a lot of American history. If you're going to read spy nonfiction, it's Ben McIntyre. I mean, he's the one. He just Operation Mincemeat et al. Or Eric Larson or Nathaniel Philbrick. I like things that could be seen as historical fiction, but they're actually history, but they tell them in sort of a historical fiction way, which may be the genre that I moved to. So I like to see how they take real life characters and make them come alive, although they've been dead for a while, and make these esoteric events that, they're talking about voting on the Panama Canal. How is that interesting? But they make it interesting. Yeah. So I like that. But I am eclectic. When I started getting back into espionage writing again and wanting to get really serious, and when I went to audiobooks, I just blew through as many classic espionage thriller books as I possibly could, especially the first of series. What made them stick? What made Vince Flynn or Brad Thor, the authors, Mitch Rapp or Scott Horvath or Mark Groening, Court Gentry, what made those things stick? And currently, James Reason, the Thriller List, the Jack Carr books. And that's why I wanted to hear it. And I feel if I hear them, my eyes skip. You're reading along and you're kind of looking for the daisies were blooming and the sun was shining and the sky was blue. And then he pulled out his Glock and he shot the guy twice in the head and one on the chest. Now I'm to the stuff I like to read. And you sort of skip that stuff in between. But if you're listening, you can't do that. You got to hear it. Yeah. So I can hear how they write. I heard how Le Carré wrote. I went back, and I'm a Sherlock Holmes fan. I went back and listened to all the Holmes again to see how to, because I think Sherlock Holmes is the greatest fictional character of all time. So,
those are great.
People think he's still alive. He was a real character and that he's alive. Mm-hmm. How good can he get?
He's not alive? He's not real?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I hate to. Oh, yes, of course he is. I go to Sussex. He's raising bees there. You'll find them there. So I have to study. I need to study the genre to get a little bit better. That's why I thought I became a better writer. Is understand how the peers did it.
And of course, you read my books.
You write? You're right. Of course. Yes. Like, hang on, I got to Google really fast here. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, you're supposed to say, you always say the host. It's been a big influence. I love his writing.
Your books, I knew exactly which books. Let's see how you spell your last name.
That's all right. I've been put down by bigger.
That's not a put down. You're now on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, you've made the list.
Yeah, my book made the bathroom in the White House.
Did it really? Well, congratulations. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now you're getting too technical. Yeah, which bathroom it was? Well, it certainly wasn't Trump's. He doesn't read, but
he doesn't.
Well, but you being that person in propaganda, how do you see it now? Like today, it's gone wild with, like you were saying, the digital age and the internet and all this social media.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff flying around, and people are buying it. Like there's Hillary's cooking babies and pizzas and all this.
Pizzagate.
Yeah, but all this stuff flies around, and it's serious enough that people go and shoot in a pizza place, or they really believe all this stuff. It's got to be amazing for you being in that business before. Not that that's what you were doing, but kind of.
Yeah. Well, we did our things, but I think it hits me more in fact, I teach it. I teach misinformation classes in mass communications and social media and news. I teach pizza. I do Pizzagate and the different biases and confirmation bias and things like that. And it is, I don't know if it would make my life as a propaganda officer easier or better. I'd have to think about that for a second. Because I don't know, because you have a specific target audience.
Yeah.
Whether it's a lot of stuff we did was generic because we couldn't go necessarily right to somebody most of the time. Yeah, I could and did, but it's more nation building, Soviets in Afghanistan bad, Americans good type of thing. But you didn't really know how effective you were. But now you would be able to see that because you'll see the tweet immediately.
Yeah.
The guy who tweeted the Osama bin Laden attack, real time.
Yeah.
That's, how could that possibly occur? And someone would tweet, I just saw this piece on this person doing this. Boy, that really makes me mad. Then you may have some impact at least, but you're tweeting out, and that can get retweeted, and off you've got a million people on the tweet. Back in the day, all the Soviets or we could do is you get it on a station somewhere, or you post it in some newspaper in India or wherever the hell it go, and then it would get replayed. All right, oh, we didn't post it, or they didn't post it. The Soviets used India a lot. It would go, it was in the India this, and now it's being replayed. We had nothing to do with it. And that's sort of just generic, high. But now you can get it right away. And that's what is happening inside the United States with information, facts versus fiction, right? And if you can't get people to believe fact, then we're sort of in trouble. My job is to get people sometimes, I believe I use the truth a lot. I used fact and truth in my work. I thought that was much more effective than fictionalized real propaganda because people could sniff that. But now you can't really tell the difference. You could put out, and they are putting out, we're putting out, anybody's putting out stuff that is blatantly false as true. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with government, CIA versus FBU or whatever. It's FBS. It's everybody can do it. Everybody's a journalist. Everybody's a propagandist.
There's so much noise out there. It used to be a much more narrow track for you guys to distribute information and put things out there, but now it's just so much input from everywhere. It's hard for people to separate fact from fiction.
Exactly. Well, I tell my class, he says, if you guys don't think that you're seeing fake propaganda websites, TikTok sites on a daily basis, then you're fooling yourself. Mm-hmm. Okay? The Ukraine-Russia is the TikTok war, it's been called. And so it's like, it doesn't affect me, this propaganda stuff, because I'm just on TikTok and Snap and Instagram. If you don't think you're seeing it on a daily basis, or have seen it within the past week, then you are wrong. Mm-hmm. Let's explain that. So everybody is seeing it, and it takes that effort to decide what is verifiably true or more true or false. And that's kind of what I try to teach in my classes, is to be skeptical, not cynical. Okay, if you just say everything's garbage, everything's propaganda, we're lost. But if you say, you know what, that may be true, let me check it out, we have a chance.
Yeah.
So I think it might be more difficult it wasn't difficult for the Russians for the election, because they have a split America.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as if what they did in 2016 they're still doing now is anything different they were doing in the 1950s and 60s. They've been feeding the race issue in the United States for a long time to create the divide, and it just became more efficient now that they can just do it from Macedonia and Ghana. So it's hard now to just say that's an American site, that's a Russian site, that's who knows where that's coming from, because people take no time whatsoever to determine the validity of what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They just hit the share button, and the Russians know that. They're making it appealing. Are we doing it? I'm sure we are, but the internal social media world inside Russia might be slightly different than the one inside the United States, I would say. Just a little bit. So we're a much fertile ground for using those techniques. It's a little bit more difficult. A little bit more difficult. There's ways to do it. There's more than just Russia proper. So if people aren't discerning, then we're sort of in trouble.
Yeah. You don't think the Russians are posting that Putin is a dictator and stuff?
I don't think that. Yeah. Well, there probably are some Russian citizens who were posting that. You're not going to see them for a while.
Yeah.
But hey, let's hands up for the people who are doing the independent news from Russia, who got kicked out, who set up sites just outside the country and kept it alive and are beaming things in through VPNs and the like. I mean, they're not giving up. They're trying to get the word in to people, and it's difficult, but they didn't give up. So let's give them some credit, because no one knows what their names are either, but they're doing it for their country, for their people, actually.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Now, so in your Spy Devils, and you've got fiction in there, how do you decide or create your character, the main characters in the book? Like, and how do you experience them? And I say this because, we've had a lot of fiction writers, and a lot of people will say it's their, they see it in these characters, and they think of them as kids or family, and they hear their voices and all this sort of stuff. What's your experience?
Well, I try to say, is there somebody who I really know who I can base this on? What collection of characteristics, looks, activity, expertise can I put together and say, oh, this is my friend this, my friend that, my friend that, and I'll create this person. And that's a lot of how I sort of put them together. I give them a face of somebody who I know, even if it's not necessarily based on them. And then I'll be honest with you, I think movies. But I'd say, okay, this person looks like Brad Pitt. This person looks like Audrey Hepburn. This person looks like that. So I give them if I don't have the face of my friends, I give them a face of somebody who I can visualize as I'm going in. They may not talk like them unless they act like them. But a lot of times in my book, I will even say, this person looks like Orson Welles or something like that. I don't have a character that looks like Orson Welles. Maybe I'll start one. But no one even knows who Orson Welles is.
Yeah.
But and I teach him in my class. But so I try to do this combination of people who I have come across, know, and use the quality and characteristics of those people to create the core of who those people are. When it comes to looks, I might take who they were, one of those people, or I'll just grab a movie personality so I can visually see them up on stage in front of me and say, okay, Brad or Jake Gyllenhaal, who's kind of Bridger. Brad Pitt and Jake Gyllenhaal are my main character, Bridger. That's what he looks like. So if you're listening, buy my book. So and in fact, that's who I wrote it. You kind of write it for those kind of people. So this is how they would act. This is how they kind of talk. That's kind of how I hear it. But 60% of the people who I build are based on people who I know, in some sense.
Yeah, you could always use my face too if you want a good-looking character.
No, I'm a little bit more discerning than that.
Now, I'm curious how that works when it comes to villains.
Villains is a different story because I don't really know that many villains.
Hopefully, yeah.
Well, later in my life, I worked on political campaigns overseas for basically presidents and prime ministers, and so you kind of come across some different people. And so, if you're looking for an oligarch from Eastern Europe or Ukraine or wherever, they're out there, and you can just either you come across them, people have mentioned their name enough, and just go find them. In my current book I'm working on, I needed a Chinese drug lord. Well, it just so happened that the big Chinese drug lord was arrested coming through Amsterdam, so he became the basis for my overall this particular character, and plus other things. So somewhere out there are the bad guys. I may not know them, but you go find them. Who is the bad guy drug person? Who is the African warlord or something like that? And I think the key is to find people who can actually exist in reality. They're not superhuman. The bullet doesn't miss them. They don't make mistakes. They're bad people, Chinese drug lords, and they have how they get there, who they step on to get there. How do you say that and get that across so that you feel their villainy versus your good guys? And maybe they're not quite so villainous all the time. Maybe they're actually sort of not decent or nice, or maybe they are decent and nice. They got a family too, but they just have a bad profession.
Yeah.
Really, really bad profession.
Well, villains don't usually think they're villains. So they think they're just good people doing what they think they should do. So that's an easier way to write them as human beings.
Pablo Escobar and all those, even the current ones today, they built zoos and hospitals and airports and school and all these things for their communities. Right? They were seen as great people in their communities because they were using their money for doing these things for a reason, right? For reasons.
Yeah.
But who doesn't want a good hospital? Who doesn't want a good school? So here's this awful drug lord who's doing these good things for his angle. So yeah, how do you write that? How do you make that person sympathetic and unsympathetic at the same time?
Yeah,
that's the balance I tried to. In fact, that's my editor and I are going through that right now. How do I make this person a little bit more one thing than the other without being ridiculous? Say, oh, they wouldn't do that. And so that's a challenge of a writer, right? And you get better. I don't like, that's probably why I'm not the greatest bestseller in the world, just cliche characters. The only this guy knows the president who can save the world, and the bullet never hits them.
Yeah.
And they hear the bullet whiz by their ear, but they do double somersaults and roll down the stairs and able to put the bullet right between the guy's eyes. I know that's what people like to read, and I don't read my stuff. Yeah, I got a little bit of it. I was told you have to have some of that. So I changed my book to have some of that.
To make it more entertaining.
To make it more entertaining. People did, when I wrote the first draft of the Spy Devils about certain types of, I was in corporate intelligence at Motorola for 16 years. And so I thought, I'll write a corporate intelligence book, and how corporate intelligence overlaps with real espionage. And that'll be how this person who's not really an espionage person gets thrown into this wacky world, kind of like North by Northwest kind of sense feeling. And, red lights, sorry, no thank you, boring, not your main character. I actually wrote Bridger, my main character in Spy Devils now, as a secondary character in that first draft of the book. And when I got done, I had Ryan Steck at the best thriller books, best spy book. I'm getting his site wrong, but he's a great reviewer of espionage books, a good friend of espionage writers. And a couple others go, who's your main character? this guy or Bridger? I go, I think it might be Bridger. I go, you're right. He's much more interesting. I want to know more about him, not this other mope, who, by the way, was based on me. So thank you very much. So I changed the book. I changed the main character. I changed the focus, and that's more, has to be more I call bang bang, which is more entertaining. And I get it. I'm all for it. And people like it. I think there's actually a decline of that kind of book right now. But it's still what the market looks for. I try to balance out that with real characters, real people, stories that are a little bit more realistic, perhaps. I might be overstating it.
You mean,
but
you mean you weren't able to miss the bullets and fly downstairs and hit the guy in the head?
No, I did. I fell down the stairs, lost my breath, went back up the stairs and grabbed my shoes that fell off and ran away crying like a baby.
That's the real story.
That's the real story. I'm sticking with it.
Yeah.
No, but my character, my main character, Bridger, he's got some of those characteristics because you have to have that person if you're writing thrillers and espionage. Yeah. You can't just have the bumbling fool unless you're doing Pink Panther or something like that. You can have Sherlock Holmes be a drug addict, but he's still Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
Do you ever take people that you've run across in your life, in your experience, that you really don't like or that are terrible people, and put them in your books and perhaps make them evil and have them killed off?
Have I done that? I have made caricatures of people or conglomerations of people in books who I very much know. And if they really read closely, they might see themselves there. And I may not have had them in the most flattering light, or actually I may have had them in the reality light as opposed to how they may see themselves. Mm-hmm. But I haven't gone off and said, I couldn't kill you in real life. Let me put you against the wall and shoot you here. But I do try to make, when I wrote Spy Devils, I wanted it to be someone saying, when they read it, yes, I see myself in that situation. I know that person, especially when it was more corporate oriented. I know that boss. I know that HR person, who I kept in the book, by the way. Because who likes HR, right? So they're that person, and who likes pompous VPs and that type of quality, top of the corporate boardroom type of thing. I tried to be realistic, but I want people to say, yeah, that's me. I'm that guy who had to go there, or that person, sorry, who had to go there and do that or does that every day. I wanted people to see themselves in some of these characters, not dreaming that I want to be, the superhero person who can fly type of person.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you like to interact with readers or fans or people and stuff like that? You've got a website and you do social media and stuff. What's your favorite? Let the listeners know where they can find it.
Well, of course, I talk, and face-to-face is always great. Talking to people like you and answering questions, having to think on my feet or in my chair, and trying to get some point of views across to be somewhat inspiring. That's always fun. When digitally, it takes time. I'm actually hiring some help to help me out digitally. Twitter and Facebook and that. I'm old, so I got to be on Facebook. I'm not going to be on. I'm not going to be on. When I just digression. When I do surveys for my media classes. And first day of class, what social media do you use? 5-6 years ago was Facebook and Twitter, and now it's like Facebook doesn't even show up. Twitter maybe. TikTok, of course, was nowhere. Now it's number one, and there is no number two. YouTube, Twitter. So ways to interact change. What I would say when it comes down to content, do I read reviews? We want reviews. Reviews are saying thank you to an author for doing something that you may like, and telling other people that, hey, this might be worthwhile. But I also will accept constructive criticism, not negativity, not, hey, you suck. That doesn't really help me. But if you can say, this was unclear. You needed this. This needs to be written very, all in. I'm listening. Write it up, and I'll try to pay attention to that. But there's a on social media, the people like me, the writers, we have our ongoing Twitter conversations and support each other. You got to support your fellow authors, and that support gets you in contact with more readers, and then you have readers starting to follow you more. And I started getting emails. This guy, extremely nice email from a gentleman who says, I very rarely send emails to authors, but I really like your book and realism. So, that heartfelt thank you. I sat back and was just kind of patting my chest saying, victory. It's like my wife. My wife is in her last year of teaching after all these decades. And, sometimes they get good feedback, but she would have a parent come up or a student come up years later and say, your class really meant a lot to me. It made a difference. And she would say, that's why I do this, is for that, on top of everything else, of course, but for the feedback that you get, you made a difference in somebody's life. So if you entertain somebody and they're going to take the time to actually write to you and tell you that, thank you. And so I always respond, always, even if it's just a thank you or appreciate it or something. I never don't respond when someone forwards something, likes something, whatever it might be, because if they're taking the time to do that for me, I certainly should take the time to do it for them.
That's a good attitude.
Yeah. And please, everyone, send them something.
Yes. Send me that negative criticism. I need some more.
Yeah, I guess let's see how many 1 stars we can get on here.
The 1 star I got, the guy never read the book. It was a sock puppet. I sent it to Amazon saying, hey, this guy didn't read the book. I don't know what he's talking about. And they kept the review up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And brought down the stars, of course, which is why they do it.
Yeah.
But
I always hunt them down,
If you hunt them down, you can kill them.
Oh yeah, of course. What else? It gives me something to do.
I don't do quite that. I kind of don't ignore I go to the feedback page or the review page with one eye open saying, is there anything new there? And I always need more reviews. I stopped sort of asking when I send out a book or autograph. I put a note in there saying, I basically say, reviews are a thank you. Greatly appreciate it if you have the time. Just kind of as a push.
Yeah.
And I post that occasionally online. But if people feel the need to write reviews, it's appreciated. And I don't write as many as I do, but reviews count. I teach that in my classes. Reviews count.
Yeah.
People look at reviews. Who doesn't buy the microwave without reading the reviews first, right?
Well, yeah. At least look at the averages they do, right?
Yeah, and that's why you drive the average down
for
those bad stars.
Yeah, so I'm going to get on that. Yeah.
If you're listening and you're a reader and you like the book, just take the time to don't even put words, just 5 stars, boom, off you go, or 4, or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
But that just means a lot to somebody who spent months putting something together for entertainment.
Of course, we'll do that. And everyone, you need to buy one of these books, like the Spy Devils or Secret Wars, an espionage story. And, Joe Goldberg, he really needs the money because he's not making a living off this.
I'm not making a living off.
He's not making a living.
This is my retirement.
Yeah.
This is 401k money is going to this.
Yeah. Like
Rebellious Sons, Spy Devils 2 should come out this fall. I haven't announced the actual date yet, but it'll come out this year in the fall. So keep your eyes open for that one too. That's a shameless, selfless plug. So take that.
Yeah.
And your website is joegoldbergbooks.com?
Exactly. It always will be.
Yeah. And we're going to have all that posted now because we need to help this man out. He dedicated his life to service for the country. We got to get him a retirement here. And please review,
Yes. Well, I have a motto, and I say for you two guys and anybody else, is that, anything I can do to help, let me know. So if you're a writer or somebody who's looking for things to do or doesn't know what to do, send me a note. Whatever I can do to help, absolutely. Because what else? You need it. If you need it, whatever I can do to help. So I lay that out there.
Oh, there you go. You heard it here. Only here. Well, Joe, it's been wonderful, and it's great talking to you.
Thank you very much. This has been enlightening and thought-provoking, actually. I appreciate the insightful questions.
Well, again, our guest has been Joe Goldberg, and he's writing books now, and he needs money. So,
and a good foot rub would be nice too. But I don't think I can get that on the internet. Well, actually, I can, but it's not going to that. That's Al's job.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, guys. Very
You've been listening to the House of Mystery radio show. To find out more about our guests, hosts, or show, go to www.houseofmystery.com.
Show's over for now.
Was it as good for you as it was for me?
Well, good night.
This has been a production of Something Weird Media.
I'll be back.